I'm recording now, so so it's not 3, 2, 1 go, it's 3, 2, 1 clap.
Okay.
All right.
Do we all have to do it?
Yeah. So it syncs up in the audio file for all three of them.
Okay.
All right. So 3, 2, 1. Slightly off, but it'll work.
It'll be fine.
This podcast is not about accuracy
or perfection.
It's not a new brew. It's not a new brew. It's grand.
No. It's a very old brew. Like, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Right. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Snugcast. Here we are. We're back on the Zoom, purely because of geographical difficulties with the guest that we've on tonight. And we said, look, when we have an opportunity to get a guest of this caliber on the podcast, why the fuck would you pass up that opportunity? The cans are in the fridge, the pints are staying in the kegs, and it's me, DJ, and along with my co-host Owen. How are you getting on?
Good, man. Yeah, going to just preempt the Pilsner Prowl tonight. Again, I think good weather today. I think the shoulders could have been preemptively kind of fucking going for it. Like, so I don't know. Like, it's tough to it's tough. I don't know. Do I have to put an asterisk beside some of these brews,
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because we're recording this the night after I've been at my brother's wedding, which obviously was a heavy session. And I was thinking about it. If we recorded this podcast at 4:00, I probably would have been a bit touch and go about my enthusiasm for it. But as the day got longer, like, I had a ghoul and jig just fucking breathing. So, like, I know exactly where you're coming from. And
let's do a new little segment. What were you drinking last night?
What wasn't I drinking last night? This is I'm gonna call out the Kingsley Hotel in Cork. The reason you're not fucking 5 stars is because you've got a shit selection of beer. I was on Heineken and Jameson ginger ales.
I tell you though, right? I was having a chat with a fella there the other day. I was saying, like, if you're going for a big long day session, like, I tell you, the Heineken is probably up there with like what you need to go for. Like, I'm telling you, like, if fucking you die, like, especially mixing and matching. Like, the thing with like craft beers and stuff is that, like, you like the tasting, and I like kind of, especially like now tonight where you're kind of mix and match and go, oh, what's this taste like? What's that taste like? But if you're going for a heavy session, like, I think you need to go light and breezy.
I've a hot take on this. I'm going to leave really quickly before I introduce our guest. I think the best session macro is Smithwick's 3.8%, and you can fucking scull it. Nice little caramely oak. The night before the wedding, I think I had 8 pints of Smithwick's in about 3 hours, and I could have run a marathon the next morning. Not a bother on me. So this week,
I'm going to jump back in. Not now, though.
Yeah, jump back in a minute. And we're delighted to be joined this week, guys, by a guest that we've been in negotiations with to have this guest on for months and months. And this podcast was supposed to happen at least a half dozen times. And between the jigs and the reels, between a lack of internet, between a lack of fucking bodily presence on occasions, it hasn't come together. But tonight, the stars aligned. And I'm delighted to introduce our guest this week, Tomás O'Mahony. I didn't know whether to go Tomás O'Mahony or Thomas O'Mahony or Tomás Mahuna, so I went with Tomás O'Mahony.
Well, that works. I'm happy enough with that.
So Thomas/Tomás is the host of a New Brew podcast. If you're not listening to a New Brew, get on it. A fantastic podcast. It's I would say series 1 is like this in-depth interview with brewers from independent breweries around Ireland, and series 2 then is almost like there are brewers, but it's like interesting people in the independent beer scene is how I would describe it so far. And it's a fantastic listen. Tomás, you're very welcome to Snugcast. How are you getting on?
Getting on well. Thank you very much for the kind words. It's funny, yourselves, when you put out something like this, you you don't really think that people are listening, and it's when, you know, people message you, or even the numbers when you see people are listening, it doesn't really make sense. But when people message you, or you run into someone that you know that listens, that really hits home. But, you know, I'm delighted to be on the Snugcast after decking and cows going loose and everything going wrong.
Fucking cows, man. But yeah, you touched on a good point there. I can't understand why anyone fucking listens to us, to be quite honest. But we're glad you do, lads. We're glad you do. So, Thomas, would you mind, just for the listeners who aren't familiar with a new brew, quickly, how would you describe it in your own words?
So I've actually had to say this to people so many times, so it's like a sales pitch at this stage. It's conversations about beer where the beer is the least interesting thing that's being talked about.
I like it.
Yeah, and my thing with getting people on is it's people that have more to say than just talking about the beer. So you mentioned season 1 is about, it's interviews with brewers and kind of like a real good introduction of the exciting people that are in Ireland. Season 2, it has a couple of brewers in it, but it's kind of like looking at the people who are behind the scenes. And season 3, which has recently started, is a look at kind of the wider issues. So Christina Wade, that was recently on, talking about the continuity, history of brewing in the Middle Ages. Because if anyone has listened to it, my 5-minute intro is connecting what people are about to a wider context. And that's the most interesting thing about beer, is that it's not just the beer, it's about something else.
Yeah,
you're dead. Yeah, you're dead right. Like that. Like beer brewing is boring. That's a boring. People talking shite about, but this or like mashing, and that's bollocks. Like, it's the story about how they set up the beer. Now that's the real crux of it. That's what I want to hear. You know, all those little tidbits and stuff. I love those little stories. You know, I couldn't give a fuck now what kind of hop is in a beer.
Well, like the thing, and it's funny because I've talked to so many people who aren't into craft beer that have tried a couple of things based off, and it's mainly like, you know, family, friends, and that sort of thing, who've listened to it by the behest of me mother. It's like, I need to listen to Thomas's, you know, podcast.
Yeah.
But have kind of tried a couple of things, and it's, brewers have much more interesting opinions about things in general than what goes in the beer, because beer is beer, you know, it's there to be drank, it's there to be have fun with, and you can get into the deeper thing of it. But like any good conversation that happens in the pub, you have about 2 minutes about what you drinking, you know, and then the rest goes from there.
Some of that lying in the corner then about his story.
Yeah.
I was there, yeah. Oh yeah, Michael D drank my beer, all right, yeah.
My uncle is Packy Bonner, you know.
yeah. Oh, I was there.
Italia 90. Italia fucking 2021, lads. No, because you touched on a good thing there, because I like, obviously it's important as a brewery to bring out a good fucking beer, like that's number one. But it does make you appreciate the beer more when you hear the story behind it, as opposed to not just like what the ingredients are and how, you know, the process behind it. Like Ballyclacavin was a great episode. Just the whole, like, you know, the way the food industry do the like farm to fork, whereas like this is like, you know, field to
farm to glass.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something that started with F, but I don't got anything. But yeah, maybe maybe Barley to Bladder or something
farm
like that.
Barley to Bladder.
Yeah, you know, that might be the way to go about it. No, it's really good concept. Now, every episode you ask the person you're interviewing a question. I'm going to ask you now. What is craft beer?
Craft beer is beer that is made with intention. So it's people that want to make something good that goes beyond just being a product. So it's like people that are putting a little bit of themselves in the beer and taking the risk. You know, it might not be for everyone, it might not sell well, this is what I want to make. This is what I want people to drink. And it's a tough question, and it's why I ask people, can they define what it is? I think craft beer forever will be a marketing term. I think it's whatever people make of it. You know, people will have different perspective on what is craft beer. Some people will think Hop House is a craft beer. Some people will think, you know, Brewdog is a craft beer. And some people will have a great appreciation for real small batch independent beer. And I think if you're calling it craft beer, that is open to interpretation. Independent is something that can be clearly defined, but it's what people make of it, really. And it's the same, the people that are making it is what they are making of the beer that they're making.
Yeah, it's been really bastardized, hasn't it? Like it has, though, you know. But there was something really interesting. I can't remember who was saying it on the podcast. It could have been, is it Liam from St. Mel's, had a very interesting point that actually, when I was listening to him, I was like, Jesus Christ, he's actually describing me and Owen 5 years ago. And he talked about, you know, you put to him, people should go and listen to the episode, because I'm just paraphrasing here now, about how essentially, like, you know, is the likes of Cute Whore and Hop House doing damage to, you know, independent breweries? And Liam was like, actually, no, because the people who were drinking Cute Whore and Hop House, i.e. me and Owen 4 or 5 years ago, are now the ones who are drinking, you know, your Kinnegars, your St. Mel's, etc. The people who were drinking, you know, a slightly different red ale or a slightly, you know, hoppier lager are now the people who are looking for brown ales, who are looking for, who are expanding their palate. It's almost like inadvertently the macros are creating a little gateway into a different type of beer than what you're served in your than your trilogy of taps in every fucking pub in World Ireland. And I thought that was a fantastic point, because it actually took my snobbery away for a second, and almost was like, yeah, you came from drinking Cute Whore and Hop House thinking you were a fucking hipster. Like, whereas the truth reality is it helped certainly us, like, because, you know, remember on Electric Picnic 2016, and we in the Cute Whore tent thinking we were right, like connoisseurs of beer, like.
Right, Cute Whores.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we weren't. Actually, I have a good story there recently about kind of craft beer as a name. So a friend of mine was down in Killarney there last weekend, and they went into some kind of random pub in Killarney, sat down, and they were like, you know, kind of, one of the lads ordered Guinness, one of the lads was ordering a Heineken, and then one of the lads said, do you have any pale ales? And your one goes, what's that? So then the waitress goes, what's that? So they were like, like a craft beer. She was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, we have Coors Light, Carlsberg, and Heineken.
So craft beers or beers that start with C.
Yeah. Oh, fucking yeah. So like, I can actually like knock you down a peg as well. Like, you know, it's kind of, you know, places that just kind of serve those macro beers as well. Like, you know, as in you going in with your fucking highfalutin notions, like of trying to get, you know, just trying to get. Sometimes you kind of have to just appreciate the pub for what it is as well, rather than, you know, trying to. I don't know. I think sometimes like those pubs which have always been a Guinness pub or something, you know, like that's what you need to drink in there, regardless of what your feelings are about independent brewers or not. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's good to experience that.
But I would say it cuts both ways, in that I think there is a lot of space for a lot of pubs to start stocking, you know, local beer. But also I think, and like, this is a big thrust of a new brew, is that I don't have the best palate. There are better podcasts, you know. Listen to Irish Beer Snob at Wayne.
Yeah.
Listen to Mother Max. If you want to hear people with good palates talk about good beer, listen to them. I bring the journalist side of it, and kind of digging into the deeper issues. But, you know, my family have a tradition of on Christmas Day, go to mass, go up to my grandmother's house, and my grandfather, God rest his soul, he would have a crate of Bulmers, a crate of Heineken, a crate of Budweiser, and a crate of Miller. And didn't matter what you were drinking, you went and you had what you got. And I think there is, in particular in craft beer, something that's like a little bit lost of an appreciation of the basic things, you know, understanding where stuff came from. And, you know, sometimes you have to drink a room temperature bottle of Miller because it's where you're at, you know.
Yeah.
Context is everything.
Yeah, and like sometimes that doesn't take away from the night as well either. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, you can have a ferocious night fucking piling in bottles of Miller into you, you know?
Sure, some of the best nights I ever had in my life were through a case of Carpacki. You know?
Out in a car park drinking Carpacki.
And you know what? It's gas because I went recently, it was my partner's birthday last month, and we went to Galway, and it was the first night the pubs were back open. And we're in the Blue Note in Galway. Shout out to Blue Note, incredible pub. And like, if I'm in a pub and I can't see what the tap is, get yourself a pint of Guinness, and that'll be the Guinness will be the gauge of how well they look after their taps and how well they look after their lines. And I had it first pint, and it was so nice. I drank it for the rest of the night because I think it's when you get an appreciation. I have this thing with food as well. If you can appreciate the very building blocks of everything, then you can understand everything that's built on top of it. If you can't appreciate vanilla ice cream, how can you appreciate chocolate or strawberry or mango or whatever the fuck it is?
Or passion fruit.
Passion fruit.
Or Carpacki.
Or passion fruit. Shout out to the Tig Special.
Shout out Tig Williams, the Tig Special in Mother Riley's Rathmines. If you're ever in Rathmines, go into Mother Riley's and ask for the Tig Special. Stream his single, My Father's Clouds.
We'll throw up the link to Spotify in the show notes that we don't ever do. That's a lie. But yeah, listen to Tig on Spotify. Good man. A good lad, Tig. Speaking in oceans, lads, will we fucking crack on with the Pilsner Pro?
Here, actually... Before we introduced Tomas there, I said I wanted to jump back in with something, and
you were
talking about caramel notes on this. Was it on the Smithwick's? Was it
on the Smithwick's? Yeah,
on the Smithwick's. Yeah, lads, are caramellos still a thing?
Yeah, with a cup of coffee now, good caramello and a nice cup of coffee.
I haven't seen a caramello knocking about though, like, you know. Out in the wild, like, do you know what I mean? Out in the wild.
But do you look for them?
Probably not. No, this is something that just came into my head 5 minutes ago.
Right, but like out of them bars, right? Is the Caramello the best one?
The Dairy Milkers, like the Cadbury's, the Cadbury 8 squares or whatever they are.
Yeah, like I love a golden crisp and a mint crisp as well.
Yeah. What? Right. Right. Let's draw up a little league table. A knockout of them. I
actually fully know the entire listing of the Cadbury catalog is Caramello, Whole Nut, Fruit Nut, Tiffin, Turkish Delight, Caramello, and Plain.
So what? Whole Nut.
So what's going number one? Oh no, what's going
number 8 or whatever the fuck it is?
Turkish Delight.
Yeah, agreed. It's not even a Turkish Delight because it's not like an actual Turkish Delight you get in Turkey.
Turkish Delight. Right. Next up, Whole Nut.
No, Fruit Nut. Whole Nut is number 1 for me.
Whole Nut number 1.
Whole Nut is good.
Whole Nut. There's too much of a nut in it. Too fucking big on the nuts. It should. If it was half nut, I'd fucking put it up there. But it's whole nut, and it's just too much nut for me.
Right, let's split it down the middle anyway. Fruit Nut anyway is number 7.
Right, yeah.
Can we agree that Tiffin is number 6?
Yes.
Right. Mint crisp 5.
Yes.
Yes, I hate mint, so mint would be very low.
Mint
Mint
crisp.
crisp 5. So the top 4 are walnut, caramello,
Golden
Plain.
crisp and plain.
golden crisp and plain.
Who's going to be the halfway juncture now?
So yeah, I think walnut has to be maybe 2 or 3. So
Yeah. 3.
Oh.
3.
I would say plain number 4.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, right. Plain whole nut.
So we put walnut 3. So we have to choose between golden crisp and caramello. I know caramello is good with a cup of coffee, but golden crisp is more versatile. So I think golden crisp is number 1.
Now,
caramello number 1.
In the context of the Snugcast, you're in a pub that has chocolate behind the bar. Which one are you going for?
Oh, with a
Purple
pint.
snack.
No. We're this is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Are we bringing in purple?
Where anything can happen, is it?
Crossover.
I'm asking for a purple snack. Don't see.
But if you have the choice between a golden crisp and a caramello,
I like me safety. I like the safety.
A purple snack and a packet of bacon fries.
Yeah,
No, you can't. It's either a caramello or a golden crisp. I'll have one of each. So
it's like that'll be like you, like any superpower you want. More hair.
No, I don't miss it. You see, I wouldn't ask for that. Any superpower I want.
I would say the caramello is very contextual. You only have it in certain moments where a golden crisp is universal. You know, you can have a golden crisp at a match. You could have it walking along the road. You could have it for breakfast. You're thinking of the man sitting in the van at 7 o'clock in the morning going in and get his breakfast roll. What chocolate bars is he getting? Golden crisp.
Golden crisp, yeah. The caramello is too liquidy for that hour of the morning.
The modern man does not have the time for the caramello.
But what happens if you're having a coffee with your breakfast? Do you know what I mean?
Then caramello, but that's what I'm saying is contextual.
Caramello gets stuck on your finger. It's a caramel and stuff in. Messy, like.
Yeah, and if you're going into the building side after that, then
you'd have fucking it'll get stuck in the concrete then. That's what happened with the Micah scandal in Donegal. Caramello.
The houses were made of caramello.
I tell you that. It's all caramello's fault.
Donegal is built out of caramellos.
Cadbury should be paying the redress for the Micah scandal. Full redress for the Micah scandal. Cadbury should be footing it. We're going to get sued by Cadbury's. Allegedly. We just said allegedly, so we're covered.
As a side note, New Brew fully supports the Micah redress.
As does Snugcast, yeah. Full redress for them. Poor unfortunate souls. We sorry we're taking the piss out of you lads, but it was funny at the moment. It felt right at the time.
Oh fuck.
It was the natural progression from what was being said. Right, lads, the pills go
for it.
Right, let's go for it. Let's move things on. So sorry lads, the dog is trying to push me out of the way here now. She's trying to make herself comfortable on the couch next to me. Or else she's trying to get a sup of this beer.
Give us about 2 seconds. I need to get the charger for me vape.
Do.
Yeah. Right. Let's refresh the listeners' ears on the 5 categories of the Pilsner Prowl.
Category 1 is the Ghoul and Jig. So the Ghoul and Jig is how much does she get your shoulders dancing?
Right, yeah, go on, yeah.
So if you remember Larry Ryan's polka one.
I know, well, yeah.
Do you know Larry Ryan's polka?
Yeah, no.
So
he's Billy Ryan's brother, is it?
No, do you know Larry Ryan's polka is the tune that them Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet are dancing to in the Titanic
in the
film.
back of the car, is it?
No, that wasn't a polka. That was a dirty. That was the original Dirty Dancing.
They were listening to WAP.
They were.
Yeah.
Oh, Larry Ryan's polka is for, do you know that's that the do 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 do. To me, like the Ghoul and Jig. If you were to get a perfect score in the Ghoul and Jig, that that like your shoulders would be dancing.
Oh yeah, and you'd kick off and you'd sink the Titanic with the dancing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You'd jig your way into the path of an iceberg, so you would. The second score is the Quiver and Quench. Yeah. The third one is the Post a Pint Gasp. Then we have the Gibber and the Pokeability. So perfect. What we are reviewing today, what we are putting through the gauntlet, this fucking Pilsner Prowl, it's like Gladiators meets the Crystal Maze, but for Pilsners.
Yeah.
And we are looking at Dead Center Brewing's Dead Pixels 4% Pilsner. So, first of all, before we get into the scores, just general impressions, lads. What are we thinking about this beer?
First question, how many cans of this have we each drank?
I'm on my third.
Today, is it? Or
today, yeah, but I had about 6 or 7 of them about 2 weeks ago, but that was after drinking a rake of the Loop Head Pilsner from Western Herd. Confusing. And just a big mix and match of stuff that people brought to the house.
Okay. What about you?
I actually bought a big box of beer from Beer Cloud done by Dead Center, and do you know what? I had 3 cans of it while watching the match last Sunday, and it was a nice sipper for the match. And this is the last can in that box right now. And I was there during the week, gasping for a pint, and just saw it in the fridge and was like, no, that's been saved for the Snugcast.
Love it, yeah. And I'm on similar to DJ today. I'm on my third can, and it was fresh to me today. First sip was today, so I'm raring to go. So sorry, DJ, you're asking overall impressions, was it?
Yeah, just general observations.
Same, like real definite sipper wear, isn't it? Like you could just kind of tip away on that. Actually, I retract my Heineken statement from earlier on. You could tip away on this, couldn't you? He could be. Yeah.
Like
maybe you get absolutely fucking wellied. Like I don't know.
It's 4%, so like it's a.
Percents don't mean a thing. Do you know what I mean? They don't mean a thing when it comes to drunkenness. That's only
about volume.
Yeah,
drunkenness is a state of mind.
Exactly. It's
all about perception.
It's all about perception. That's how you get away with the drink driving.
Fuck's sake.
Shout out to the Healy Rays. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. So I actually think this is a really nice, clean, inoffensive beer.
Inoffensive is the word that I would use.
Yeah, I think it's inoffensive.
Have we had many offensive beers?
Yeah, but that feels like a bit of a backhanded compliment.
Well, inoffensive, yeah.
Inoffensive, yeah. But look, there's only one way to settle this. How does she get on against the Pilsner Prowl? So the Ghoul and Jig lad. So we're ranking this 5 for 16. So if these were on the Pints in Worldwide Wines and it was 5 for 16, how many would you pick up and what would you be willing to pay for them? So Owen, I'll go with you first.
So what's this again? This is the Ghoul and Jig, is it?
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second now. Hold on.
Go on, have a good swig over there.
This is Jesus. It's good, isn't it?
That's a man that's after having a bag of chips now drinking a can. Right over.
Like it's so fucking light and refreshing, isn't it? Like it's really. Do you know what? Like we've said, a few of them have been like crisp, but like this is kind of just really refreshing and there's like maltiness and it's kind of like a little sweet and stuff as well. Like it's really like definitely 5 for 16. 5 for 16. 5 for 16
okay,
from me.
You're saying 5 for 16.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, right, before we get to Moss, the definitive view. I'm going to say that I disagree with you to a point. No, I think your bag of chips has skewed your I think you just have a fierce lip on you.
Yeah, well, I do, but I always do as well.
I think you're cooling or jigging before you came on. I think this isn't a get goer. I think this is a stay goer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to say 3 for 9.
3 for 9. Jesus.
Wait, hold on. What's that? That's €3, can you? I'm going to say 3 for 9.33. Because I think I'd want something else to get me going first, but then I'd sit with this all night. Tomas, how are you fixed? What are you thinking?
I would say, I think actually having them during the match last week was the perfect test, because I had a load of mates that were in the pub, and I said to myself, you know what, I'm not going to the pub, I'm going to watch the match at home. And it was that consistent, steady, nice beer. I would rate it low on shoulders. I don't think it gets you going. I think it's
who is this guy?
I think it's the beer that you switch to after about 3 or 4 of trying, I'll try that, I'll try this. And then you want something that's going to be consistent throughout the rest of the night. I think this is the perfect beer to get 8 of and get 2 or 3 other, weird beers.
How many? So what would you? How many Tyke specials would you switch after?
3 Tyke specials.
Do
you know what? I would switch to it after about 3 Tyke specials.
Yeah.
But if I was to rate it on the Ghoul and Jig, I would say, because I think it's a lovely beer, and actually, funny enough, I think it's the perfect gateway beer as well, because it's that nice bridge between something that's a little bit macro, and so actually, funny enough, something like the Loop Head, it's that perfect middle ground.
Yeah.
I would go 3 for 10.
When you were talking and when you were saying that there, all I was thinking of was, that episode of South Park where it's like, I'm a little bit country, and I'm a little bit rock and roll. And Randy's in the Christian rock band.
But yeah, no, I think
it's a little bit country and it's a little bit rock and roll.
Yep, I think they should. I fully think Dead Center should produce this in massive amounts, fuck it into kegs, and stick it into pubs, because I think it's the perfect. Because funny enough, I was in Wexford last night, and my father, who wouldn't be a craft beer drinker, had a can of DL from Kinnegar, and he was like, "That's really nice." I think this is the perfect pint for someone who isn't into craft beer, and for people who are into craft beer as well.
It needs to become the Mullingar Macro.
Yeah.
The Mullingar, yeah.
The Mullingar, put that on the can. Mullingar Macro.
Mullingar. I'm gonna write it with a pen on my. No, yeah, I think we're there. So this is the Quivering Quench now, right? I'm going to say, so we're saying, right, it's the inverse Richter scale. So if a 9 on the Richter scale is like the equivalent of an explosion of 3 billion tons of dynamite, what would this settle if that was your lip? The theory behind this is fucking brilliant. Yeah, I think this is intrinsically linked to the Ghoul and Jig. And I think it's much more a gasper and a gibber than a quencher. So on the inverse Richter scale, I think it's a solid 3.5 for me. Owen, what do you reckon?
I don't know. Yeah, no, you're right. It's more mellow.
Like a quencher needs to fucking like.
I know I think it needs that kind of crispness, doesn't it? It needs to.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Look, fuck it. go. What do you say? 3.5, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lob me down for the same. Yeah.
Lovely. Tomas, any takers on 3.5?
I would see. I was kind of split on this beer between having it on Sunday and having it now. On Sunday it was the perfect one where I finished one. I was like, oh, jeez, I'd love another one. I would give it a 3.75.
Ooh, that's
because
grand.
it's not crisp, but it kind of it sits on you. You know, if you're going to have another one, it's the perfect when you finish the pint and you know the other one's in the fridge.
Yeah, so that brings me on beautifully to the post pint gas, because this is what I think, right? I think it's not a quencher, which comes back to the Ghoul and Jig points we made. You want one or two before this. This is the settler. This is the goer. So it's not a quencher. It's not going to sate that gasp for a pint. But that being said, once you've had it, once you have your sip, once you're done, that post pint gasp, what I find is it's all that initial upfrontness isn't there, but everything that follows is good. So it's like once I've had the sip, then I'm like, give me more. So I can't remember what this rating is. Post pint gas. Oh, that's Bass. Yeah, I think this is the beer's biggest strength is the go back ability of it. I'm going to say that's Bass.
1S.
1S. That's Bass. It's a German. That's Bass.
Yeah. I don't know if it's I don't know if it has that gaspiness or as much as I think it does. Let me have a quick sipperoonie here again. Actually, maybe you're right though.
You let it gasp out after that sip.
Yeah, there's a lovely malty, sweety kind of taste off it, isn't there? Like that kind of finishes it off. Like it's really nice. That does linger.
Like a palate cleanser.
I think it's nearly like a that's, and then you kind of let the that's kind of linger for a bit, and then you go, Bass. You know what I mean? Like you actually kind of appreciate it later on in the taste. Like,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, but that doesn't.
I know. This is a strict scoring scale.
Hold on, that's pause. Bass. I have the pause. I've written down the pause.
Right, perfect. Thank you.
Tomas, how's your take on the post podcast?
And do you know what? I actually just finished the can here. I would say that's Ba. No S, no two S's. But for me, I would feel if I was watching a match, or there was something going on, you're watching the rugby, you're watching the hurling, you're watching the football, you finish a pint of that and you're not going to switch to something else.
Yeah.
It has that, not like the you don't have the gasp after. It's like, oh jeez, yeah. I'd love another pint of that. It's more so like I'll get another pint of that.
There's a lovely little dancing on your tongue at the end. That's not there's no gammy aftertaste, and it's a lovely clean finish.
Yeah.
But there's these little fucking beer molecules just doing their own jig on your tongue.
Yeah.
And that's good. I like that.
No, you're dead right, because I'm just finishing off my third can here, and I'm disappointed I don't have another one in the fridge. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to switch.
Well, I have another one in the fridge, right? So I'm going to go get it while Owen, you can spiel on about the jig there, the jibber for a second.
Oh yeah. So the jibber, it's kind of like the what's kind of embodiment of it in terms, we can kind of bring in the look of the can and stuff like that as well. But it's kind of like the other kind of bits that like we're just kind of thrown into a category. But yeah, so this is just scored out of 5. We kind of lost it. But I actually, just to go back on the can, like it's so like the marketing of dead center, it's so fucking just crisp and nice, isn't it? Like, you know, like that's just kind of like plain can. And then like this where like you have like the kind of like pixelated version of the thing is really nice. Like, and I just like even love like the font and stuff. Like it just really stands out in a thing. I love that. And then the beer itself, it's like, it's lovely and ambery and just catches the light. There's not much of a fizz off it, which I think is kind of what we were probably saying with in terms of like, it's not a kind of a very crisp beer or anything, like, you know, but yet it is very, very light and refreshing. Like, so, yeah, it's a goodie. What do you think, Tomas?
I would actually rate it really high on the jib, because like I'm really into packaging design and the design of the product along with the beer. And I think even the look of it in the glass, it looks like the perfect gateway beer. Like I think it does,
doesn't it? Yeah.
It's that perfect point, even in color, between a macro and, you know, your real esoteric, like small batch brew IPA, NE IPA and everything. And it's approachable. When you look at the can, like simplicity for me is always top of the range. Like I think even the name Dead Pixel, you look at the can, pixelated arrow that you see on Google Maps is made by Dead Center. It has that fluency between everything. I'd give it a 4.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good point though. Like that just like the beer itself, like actually just looking at it now, you're like, that's just a flavorsome macro looking beer there. Like, you know, it's not one of these ones where like there's like it's like not like undulating up and down, like all these like flavors cascading around in the thing, or it's not one of those beers where someone goes, like, which has happened to me before, where someone goes, "Ooh, that looks very interesting. What are you drinking?" It's not that, but it just looks like really, really like, it looks flavorsome, but it looks macro-esque. Like,
what did you give it on? I missed what you actually scored it there.
What did I jib it?
Yeah.
I haven't jibbed it yet, but I will give it a jib of 4.276.
Okay. Perfect. So here I agree with everything you've said so far. I'm not going to rehash the points on the marketing because I think you've did it spot on. And I just think like Pilsner is a fucking Czech style. And when I think of like the ultimate Pilsner, I don't think about a pure yellow lager. There's a little bit of depth. There's a little bit of je ne sais quoi. And I think that this is a cracking looking beer in the glass. Like it has that depth, like you were saying, Tomas, of color, that just extra little step beyond what you see with a macro. It creates, like, even from the can, it creates this lovely vibrant head. And as you said, Owen, it's not overly carbonated, so it's not going to be too. So when I look at that, I'm not going to try and buy a pack of fucking Rennies with it. So yeah, it's a very high rating jib for me. I would have given it 5 jibs, to be quite honest with you. Like I don't think there's any look of this beer that you would mark it down on personally.
You know, it's one of those ones as well where you're right. You're marking the jib of it on a Pilsner jib. Do you know what I mean? Like this. Yeah.
Like
it looks a.
If you went to Pilsner town in Czech Republic.
Pilsner Hampton.
Like, yeah. If you went to Barley na Pils in Czech Republic, like you wouldn't be complaining if a look like this come out to you. Like
But even if you want to check, because for any listeners, I'm after pouring a macro beer because it's the coldest thing in the fridge. If you even compared it to the color of that,
there's no
what
comparison.
You have.
Yeah.
There's no comparison.
You think an approachable beer as Dead Pixel compared to something like an unnamed macro that I'm after pouring into my glass, there's no comparison. It's high on the jib.
Yeah.
I give it.
Doesn't it, like, compared to it? You know, it looks like a diluted version of this.
Yeah, like I'd give it a 5 personally, because I think, like, I don't see what you'd mark it down on, because the look is perfect, the right level of carbonation, the right level of head, and as you guys said, the marketing, branding, everything around it is great, and I think, like, it just looks like a cracking beer. So we've got 4.276, 4, and 5. So we'll figure out what the average of that is and put it up on the spreadsheet eventually.
Great, perfect.
Right, so the puckability now. Essentially, all the other fucking scores aren't worth a shite, because this is the main man. Puckability is that Iklibidik, that fucking Weifen style, that just top notch. Like, what is the capacity of this beer to become your go-to beer every single time you have the option of drinking this beer? If you went into a pub that you've never been in before and they had 20 beers on the wall and this was there, would you choose it over any of the other 19? And that's what the puckability is. Scored 100,000. It's an unquantifiable thing, really, but we try to quantify it. Yeah, for me, I find this really tough to, where do I put it? I don't want to be insulting to what good a beer it is, but then I don't want to make it out like it's this mythical beer that could have legendary status. It's a very, like, inoffensive, I think is the word. It's a very solid beer. It's one that you would have no problem drinking anywhere. But if there was something more interesting on offer, you probably would go for that. I don't think I'm too out of line.
No, you're probably not. No.
So then, how the fuck do you score out of 100,000?
I would say, I think this is the perfect beer. Well, as close to perfect as you can get for someone, if you're out for a pint with someone who isn't necessarily into craft beer but is curious about it. I don't think this is a beer for someone who drinks saisons and farmhouse ales and brown ales. Like, for the person that is really into craft beer, I don't think this is the beer for you. And when there's 20 taps in front of you, this isn't it. I think, funnily enough, the seasonal that Hope put out this summer and this are the perfect beer if you are going on a heavy session, or if you're going for pints with someone who isn't into craft beer and you want to get them something a little bit better than a macro.
Yeah, that Hope Bohemian is top notch.
Yeah.
Not even the Bohemian. I was saying it was the 3.5% session ale or session lager they put on. Really nice.
I haven't had that yet.
Really crisp. I think those two are the ones, if you're bringing someone for pints that isn't already into craft beer, that's the point you get them. I don't think for craft beer enthusiasts, I don't think it's high, but for people who are, like I was saying, it's that gateway beer.
Yeah. So I suppose, I'm just going to throw a fucking figure at the wall and see if it sticks. Out of 100,000, in terms of puckability, this is not a bad score. If you're a first-time listener to Snugcast, this actually isn't a bad score. I'm going to throw 30,000 out of 100,000 at it.
Okay.
We've scored beers like 21 on this score, so, like, it's not terrible.
Yeah, it definitely is a tough one, because I think it's context as well, and it's probably our context as well, DJ, of how I suppose we always consumed Puck Pilsner was, you know, getting it from the fridge in Philgrimes, and like that was our go-to beer for a period, right? But I think what Tomas was saying there with regards to if Dead Center brought out a case of this and you were watching a match at home, it'd be hard to beat that, like, wouldn't it? Like, what, like as your go-to pilsner for the house with like 12 can pack of those, like.
Yeah, but but the thing is as well though, like this score is not. Will you drink 12 of them at home watching a match? It's
that's
4
what I mean.
o'clock on a Friday. Yeah, it's 4 o'clock on a Friday. You're heading to the pub.
Where you're putting the pound down at the pool table.
Have you spent Monday to Friday obsessing over the first sip of this?
Yeah, okay.
I don't think you are.
Yeah, all right. I was like, because when initially we started this conversation, I was in my head, I was like 68,000, but I think you're right. I'm going to give it a 42,000.
42,000. Very good. Come at us, bro. Convince us one way or the other.
I very much agree in that if you are watching a match, if you've a barbecue, I would say not even get a case of 12, get a mini keg or even like a half keg. It will satisfy everyone.
84 cans.
80, but I think if you are putting this on puckability for the craft beer enthusiast, I would give it a 23,000.
I thought you were just going to give it 23 full stop. I was like, Christ. You want to get center on a new brew season 3?
Yeah, Jesus.
No, but that's a solid score.
I think it's a good beer. I don't think you'd find yourself thinking about it on a Wednesday if you're going for pints on a Friday.
Yeah,
it's not that beer. It's not that beer, and I don't think they intended it to be that beer either.
That's just what I was going to say. It's not intended to be a mega beer in terms of like, it's not intended to win awards, but it is intended to be a very drinkable beer. And I think it succeeds in that 100%.
Yeah. And I think you're dead right, Tomas. They should keg this. They should send it into every pub that they possibly can, and it'll do so well as a bridging gateway beer.
But you know what they should do? They should do a fucking blind taste test with a load of owl lads in pubs who drink lager and be like, score these out of 100,000.
Remember Pepsi did that in like the early 2000s or something there, where they had like this ad of like blatantly been like, and another cola competitor, like, and it was basically, or actually they might have just blatantly said Coca-Cola. I can't remember, but yeah, they fucking.
No, didn't they say like the market bestseller?
So yeah, the market bestseller cola, and yeah, Jesus, that'd be a good one. I'd actually love that.
I got paid a $5 in a Roundy bar in Cork once to do a blind taste test on a new to the market mayonnaise versus Hellmann's.
Well, and did you select the Hellmann's?
I have no fucking idea. I was about 12 points deep. It was a good experience, though.
But it's something I will say. I think breweries in Ireland should put a good effort into making a good gateway beer, because I think that's how they're going to sell more, is not necessarily doing the middle ground, but making something that's better than the macros, that's easily as drinkable.
Yeah, I would say that, like, I think Yellow Belly have killer beer now, as you know, that's right up there for me as a gateway beer. Like, I would challenge anyone who is a lager drinker, in a macro lager drinker, to drink killer beer and tell me it's that Carlsberg is better than it. Like, it fucking isn't.
But I actually have, my brother was a Budweiser drinker until they actually took the tap away, and he now drinks Keller beer because he's moved back to Exeter Town, and whenever I'm down, he's like, I'll go down to the carry out down beside Bugler Oils and we get a few cans of Keller beer, and he drinks away on it. And I think breweries that make something that's approachable, because I think, like I was saying earlier, as people who are into craft beer, I think we can kind of get away from ourselves of stuff that appeals to people, because we were all at one stage that person drinking Hop House or Kyoto or Budweiser, and I think you need that good gateway like Dead Pixel or Keller beer or Hope's summer session beer?
There was a good point made. I can't remember which brewer made it though. Tomas on a new brew in Series 1 that it's like making lagers and pilsners is fine, but actually they're very expensive and very time consuming from a brewing perspective. So for a small scale brewery, it's a lot easier to smash out 3 batches of IPA in the time and resources it would take to do one batch of an equivalent batch of a lager or a pilsner. So I think that's probably a lot of the trouble as well in terms of like economic viability wise for these companies, for these breweries that are essentially companies trying to pay a wage and a living of the owners and their employees. It's hard to circle that square, I think.
Speaking of economic viability, let's hear a word from our sponsors.
In Glenraven's Glen there lives a man who some would call a god. For he could cure your shakes with a bottle of his poteen that cost you 30 bob. Come winter, summer, frost all over, a jigging sprig in the breeze. In the dead of night, a man steps by Macklehatton, if you please. How are you getting on, lads? We're back in the fucking room. The bladders are empty. The fucking glasses are full, I hope. And it's a pleasure to have you along with us here tonight with Tommaso Mahuna from A New Brew, myself, DJ and Owen. And we were just talking there we were talking off mic there before we came back online about hard seltzer.
We're still micing.
We were talking off
fucking Zoom thing. We need to get in a pub together. This is a joke.
Sure, look, we will. But for now, you fucking look. Let's
down in Jeff's in the Apple Market.
Down in Jeff's, yeah. Beautiful, what a spot.
We were there before. And the strawberry. But we're talking about hard seltzers and the Tig Special, and I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if Tig Williams did a passion fruit seltzer and he'd be the modern day Macklehatton.
He'd be the modern day.
Like the hard seltzers, they'll cure like fucking restless leg syndrome and all this crack, like,
Yeah, that is true.
I just presume they'd have these superpowers, the antioxidants from the passion fruit and the alcohol.
But see, that's the problem with the hard seltzers. There's awful fighting in them because you drink 4 or 5 of them in an hour, and then suddenly about half an hour later you have 4 or 5 seltzers in your system. You get an awful shoulders going,
Yeah, so that's not the ghoul and jig. That's the fucking. That's the fighting.
That's the gig and jewel.
Yeah.
But like, do you know what though, right? What you want about 5 hard seltzers, and then you want to go into a Daft Punk tribute band gig. That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's an ideal Thursday evening, if you ask me. But serious business, lads. The topic of tonight's podcast, an hour into the podcast. It's a good sign of a podcast when you're an hour in and you haven't even reached the topic yet. What we wanted to do was, look, like this, you hear the frustrations in our voices about the Zoom. We want to be back in the pub. And, we've had cans, we've had bottles, we've had pints on the podcast recently as well. We did the fucking, what do we call the Oak November again? The Candemic.
Yeah.
We drank a beer from every county in Ireland, with, give or take. So I'm here with a conversation. I was at the wedding last night and drinking with uncles that I haven't seen since pre-pandemic era. We're all vaccinated, delighted to be. So we're sitting in person having a few pints. And they all were conclusive and saying, Jesus, lads, like, isn't it great to be back in the pints? Like, the cans are lovely, but they're no comparison. And I said, you know what we need to do? We need to do a list of pros and cons for cans, bottles, and pints. To actually see, does the colloquial, what's that phrase? The anecdotal evidence. That pints are better than cans. Does it hold up to scrutiny? Now,
and we also need to arm ourselves with that evidence and, that kind of shy talk for when we get back to the pub. So we have something to fire back at, lads, because, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that's been missed from the pub is stupid arguments, where you're trying to just battle over something that neither of you actually care about whatsoever, but you will fight tooth and nail, like, over it, and then you will absolutely nail your colours to the mast to one specific thing that you actually don't even care a fucking thing about whatsoever.
So when you met my uncle Burr at my stag party last year, and Burr is the type of man that if I said the sky is blue, he'd have to tell me it's fucking red. Like, there's just when he's appointed him. So what we're going to do, lads, is we're going to arm you for the Burrs of the world, so that if they're lauding pints, we'll give you a few fucking bullets in your chamber for cans and for bottles. Or likewise, if the Burr in your world is lauding cans or bottles over pints, and if there's someone in your life who's saying, so why would you ever go to the pub again? And the can's great. We're going to come up with a definitive list of pros and cons for cans and bottles. So we drank cans tonight. Let's tackle cans first, lads.
Okay.
What do we think? What are the pros? Let's start on a positive note. What are the pros about cans? I'll kick us off. A big pro for a can is opening it. That little fucking gaseous release. That's a big pro. That's ASMR right there.
Yeah, very true. Pro as well is selection of cans. Like you just, like it's that thing of like walking into an off license and like, you have that like selection of cans in front of you that like you're able to go choose from. You're able to read the label. You're able to, actually these are probably several different points. You're able to admire the artwork of the can as well. Like there's a lot kind of like visually with the can, and in terms of like the different choices that you're able to get just from cans being a thing is a huge pro, I think.
I would say a big thing with the can as well is the volume. It's as close as you're going to get to the pint without being in the pub.
Yeah.
And it bridges that nice gap between, and most cans, they'll be relatively fresh as well, especially if you're drinking craft beer. You get that volume of either the 440 or the 500 ml close to a pint. Most of the pint glasses you buy in IKEA now are 500 ml. And you get that nice volume in between. If you're drinking something that's a little bit stronger, it's the right portion, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, and definitely if you're drinking out of a glass, like say that, like me and DJ are drinking, what are they called? Schooners, is it? These little bad boys.
Yeah.
That like they just pour nicely in it, and you kind of get that like, you get that lovely. I have a second half of this can now to drink as well. From it, you're like, oh, there's a little bit now just to kind of, So like I'm here now with the 3 cans of Dead Pixels, and this has happened to me before when I've been recording a podcast where like I've started tipping through cans, and then like I'd open a can, pour, right, and then I'd finish the glass, and then I go, fuck, I need another can now. So go to the fridge, open a can, and then drink it. And then later on that night, I'd be there and I'd do the old, shaking the cans, and then you go, oh baby, yes, half a can left of this, and a lovely little surprise for you.
But I was going to say I have a different technique for tackling a can. So when I'm halfway through my glass, I'll go back to the can, pour it out.
Yeah, no, I would generally be the same, but there's just sometimes where I might be too focused on hammering home a point with this podcast, being the ultimate professional that I am. And
you lose one yourself.
And yeah, okay, fair enough.
But if I was to get scientific, there is actually a scientific benefit to cans in terms of thermodynamics, in that aluminium loses heat a lot slower than glass. So it has that benefit. If you have a couple of cans thrown in the fridge, and even if you're drinking a schooner, they will actually retain how cold they are longer than a bottle, or if you're drinking a pint.
Lot of pros here, a lot of pros, and that's a really good point.
Hold on, that's a great, like, thermodynamics is definitely something that I'm a big fan of. So I'm going to add thermodynamics to the pros list. We need to put these lists out there somewhere.
But also, I think in terms of cans, if you are, and this is a pro of both bottles and cans that I'll get into later, but if you're going in with a big group of lads and you're getting a slab of cans or getting a load of cans, everyone understands the politics of a bag of cans if you're buying them together. You know, everyone understands, everyone has this certain amount, you know, whereas there's a lot more you're kind of like those European states before World War I when you're buying pints and buying rounds, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a collectivistic approach to cans. Can collectivism I'm going to put down as a pro.
Cans are the true socialist communist choice.
Yeah.
Aluminium is the material of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communism.
Even just the phrasing a bag of cans, like you can't beat that, like, you know.
You can't say a can of bottles.
No,
a bag of cans. But a bag of bottles would be no worth the fuck because they break off each other.
Or a bag of pints. Sure, what's that?
You could drink a bag of pints.
Right. Anything else now before we go on to the cons?
I think we're well covered there now.
I definitely think though that definitely the can is the best probably looking of everything, just with in terms of like the expressionism of the breweries with artwork and stuff like that. Like they're the best looking of them, like, you know, as in, I know like with bottles they can put artwork on them, but it's not they don't have as much expressionism with it. Like
they don't have as much real estate.
Yeah, exactly. No. Yeah, there's not much real estate. Yeah.
No, I think we've a good list of pros there now. So the pros for cans are can opening, the selection, the volume, the thermodynamics of aluminium, can collectivism or can communism, a bag of cans, because you couldn't drink a bag of bottles or a bag of pints, and the artwork. Right, what are the cons of cans?
The cons of cans are you don't drink out of a can anymore. Really, nobody, like, it's that metallic-y taste that you want to avoid, and that you pour it into a glass. It doesn't have the, you know, it doesn't have the, I don't know, I suppose I think bottles in general, the kind of 330ml bottles, you just tend to drink from the bottle, whereas I think cans you always open and pour into a glass.
Drop me a pen. Hold on a second. I did write that down though. No, that's a good point. I would say a con of a can is it is not a pint.
Yep, that is actually a very valid point.
Yeah, so volume is a pro and a con.
But it is that subtle difference between you're having a 500ml can versus a 564
pint. 68, yeah.
When you're drinking a can, especially if you're drinking a can of stout, you know the difference between, as I pour a can of stout, there's that subtle difference between I'm having a can versus I'm having a pint.
Yeah, and you were saying about, like, say, the IKEA pint glasses or whatever, but if you have a general pint glass, you know the difference there, and it always just feels empty, doesn't it? Like if you're pouring into a pint glass, like
it always feels like you could do better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have that kind of finish. You know the way, like you want the liquid just to be brimming the top of the pint glass. It doesn't get that, like, you know.
I have another con.
Yeah.
Is not typically drank on a high stool.
Very true, yeah. Yeah, like even when you get, do you know what? Have you ever gotten? I don't think I've ever done this. Has anybody ever done this where like people have gotten pints in a pub and then someone has gotten a can?
So the only situation I've ever come across where someone was drinking a can on a high stool is in Neve's father's local, where her brother-in-law is a celiac, so he drinks gluten-free beer, and the local publican just buys cans of hoofy for him. So we're there drinking pints and he's drinking cans of hoofy, but he pours them into the pint glass.
But actually,
that's
I would give you one in my local. My parents, after moving to Wexford town, but we were back living out in the middle of nowhere. Their Bulmers was in cans, no Bulmers tap. It was always cans of Bulmers in a pint glass with ice. And I think that cans are always the replacement for a pint. They're never the choice instead of a pint.
Yes. Yeah, very true. Yeah.
So we're going to go with replacement theory.
And it's something that I have where I think bottles are the perfect midpoint, but we'll get onto it later.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to bottles because there's a part of me hates bashing cans, so we have enough cons. So just to summarize, the cons are they're not a pint volume wise. You don't drink it out of a can anymore. They're not typically drank on a high stool, and replacement theory.
Yeah.
So bottles, lads, give me a pro of a bottle. I'll start this off. Similar to the can opening, there's something really satisfying about taking a bottle opener and just cracking open a bottle. And again, I think it's that gaseous release.
Yeah.
It's almost like the bottle is giving you your first post-sip gasp.
Or using other items to open your bottle. So
like
your keys, a spoon, another bottle, the side
your
of a
keys.
counter. Yeah. And there's something really impressive about that as well, you know, where you're just like, you know, there'll just be another lad at a session there and just, you know, they see you just fucking, you know, clipping it off the side of a table or like opening up with like a spoon or something, and they just give you the old like
or the old belt buckle.
But this is me actually, because I smoke, so it's like it's always me with the lighter, and you pop it and you pop a couple of, you know, it brings the people together.
Yeah. That should be actually that'll be a good topic. Like, what's the most random thing you could open a bottle of beer with?
Not tonight.
No, but I think that could be a good one. I think it could be good content.
Listeners, send us in pictures of the most random things you've opened a bottle with. Any other pros for bottles? I would say, like, the ease of holding a bottle if you're not sat at a table. So, like, if you're in a kind of at a gig or if you're strolling around somewhere.
Gigs are a huge pro.
So, like gigs/ease.
You can't get anything like, it's very hard to spill a bottle.
Yeah, whereas a pint at a gig, it's in a plastic cup, and some pint is after knocking half it because they decided to dance.
Yeah.
Get out of space.
It's the ideal accompaniment for a barbecue. Like you just have to, like, as if you're someone who is cooking the barbecue, you have to have a bottle of beer in your hand at the same time. Like, it doesn't work. The meat won't cook unless you have that in your hand.
You say that, but my barbecue has a little drop down yoke at the front, and the little ring at the front of it is the ideal space for a pint glass.
A pint glass? Wow.
Yeah, you can just rest a little pint glass there.
But
I'm talking about the generic barbecue holder, not someone who wins €600 barbecue.
But are you pouring that pint glass out of a can or a bottle,
Yes.
or do you have a flow system?
See, I don't have it. So ideally, it'd be an actual pint going there. But look,
I have two very solid pros for bottles.
Go on, give them to us.
The first one is if you bring in a case of bottles and take open the box, no one's going to argue. Everyone's going to like grab their own, they're going to, and everyone's going to, be on the same level. Everyone's going to grab a bottle, you know where you stand, you get a couple of cases, you throw them down. Everyone's going to take what they want. There's no arguing. Whereas with cans, you'll have like, oh, is that the coldest, or like if it's in the fridge. Fellas are more happy to drink a room temperature bottle than they are a room temperature can. It's back to thermodynamics.
Yeah, but I think as well, if you see a box of bottles open, sure, like one isn't going to harm, like if you take one. Whereas a bag of cans is a very intimate thing.
Yeah.
Like if you looked into a random bag of cans and took one, you'd feel like you violated the person who took the can off. Whereas if there's a box of bottles there, what's one bottle going to harm me?
But this actually segues perfectly into my second point. With a bag of cans, there's politics to it. Who gets what can, what's the coldest, if you get a mix and match, who's getting what. Box of bottles, they're all the same. You grab what you want, and that's it.
Generally, actually, coming back to the collectivism thing, generally, you bring a bag of cans for yourself, whereas you normally bring a box of bottles for a group, like. The bottles are probably more socialistic than.
Like, how many events have you been at where you've been told, bring your own drink, and you rock up, case of bottles, everyone else has brought a case of bottles, and you're just going for the whole night, and you just take what's there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Miller, Budweiser, Heineken, whatever's going, you're going for it.
I feel like this is a subtle say to craft breweries, independent breweries in Ireland, to start doing bottles of beer in cases.
Please, thank you.
Dead Centre Brewing. We want cases of Dead Pixels in bottles. We'll make it financially viable, just the three of us.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good list of pros here. I'm going to call them out. Bottle opener. Items to open the bottle with. Gigs, events, ease of carrying. A barbecue. Boxes of bottles. And the consistency of the bottles, I think, is what we were getting at the last point. Yeah. I think consistency is a good word for that. So coming on to the cons of bottles, and I have just before we came on Zoom, I was like, I have to have one of each written down, and I wrote rat piss down.
Rat piss,
because my grandmother used to always say to me, "Don't drink out of the bottle because rats have pissed on it."
I've heard that as well, yeah.
Yeah, so rat piss is a big con for me,
As someone who's worked in a pub, that is a very well-known urban legend that has no founding. Unless you are storing your bottles outside or somewhere where rats can get in, if you're in a pub and you're drinking bottles, they're usually stored in the cold room. That's completely sealed from the rest of the pub. But
you say that, but there's no smoke without fire.
Fair. But I would actually say the biggest pro and con of bottles is they can be used as a weapon, depending on what end you're on.
I was thinking of that earlier. I was like, can I say it's a pro? And then I was like, maybe that's a bit inflammatory. But yeah, weaponization is going down as a con.
Yeah,
I think you never hear of anyone being canned.
It could be a pro though. Like it's a pro in the fact that
self-defense.
Well, like neither of the other terms have a verb associated with it, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. I forgot something that I was going to say as a pro for bottles. Gesturing with a bottle is, has extra emphasis with it. You're there and you're talking, you're swinging the bottle and you're pointing with the neck of it, and, it adds emphasis to whatever you're saying.
Yeah, you can't tip a can, but you can tip a bottle, you know what I mean?
But as well, if you gesture with a point, you just spill it.
Exactly.
Any other con for bottle?
Any other con for bottle? Volume.
Yep, volume's a big one.
Volume. Like, I know you could kind of argue that maybe it's a pro in terms of it's a lower volume, so therefore, if the stuff is in the fridge the whole time, it's kind of less likely to get cold because you're drinking, you're kind of quicker changeover with it. But it's also the hassle of going back and forth and stuff. And
yeah.
But also that's another con is stackability in a fridge.
Yes.
It's horrible to stack a case. You get 20 bottles. It's a pain in the arse to stack them in a fridge over 12 cans.
They're so slippy as well in a fridge. You start stacking them they're 2 rows high, and then you take one and the whole thing just goes completely scatters everywhere.
That's a con as well. It's the cleanup, in case someone breaks one.
Oh yeah, big con there.
Everyone just goes way.
I was worrying here because I was like, oh yeah, that's another con. Not just the cleanup, but being made a dope of.
Yeah.
So we've got a good list of cons here now. We've got rat piss, which is debatable. Weaponization, volume. I have another pro or another con. The arse of the bottle is always terrible.
Yeah.
So you're pouring your can out, so there's no little shitty bit sitting there. You're drinking your pint, but the arse of a bottle is always just not right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Again, I'm not going to get into the chemistry of it because it's not fully understood yet. It's just the arse of a bottle is terrible.
And I have another con. Pouring it into a pint glass doesn't work. As it doesn't work as well as pints or with cans. It just those people who order a large bottle off the shelf, it doesn't work. Freaks of nature.
But I would actually say a huge con if you're in a home setting, you have a family gathering going on, you can never go for one bottle because you have to ask everyone else in the room, do you want one? Do you want one? And suddenly you're walking back with about 8 bottles and you're there and you're like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And it's never I can go get a bottle for myself. You have to get one for everyone else in the room.
That brings up another con, disposal. To go to the Content bottle bank.
Yeah, big con, yeah.
And actually, it's a con because glass cans are actually more recyclable than bottles.
They are. So we have storage, cleanup, disposal, and being made a dope of. So,
yeah.
But that's the thing with bottles. Who wants to go to the bottle bank on a Sunday morning? You've had a load of people over. You have
all the curtain twitchers as well are all these empty bottles.
You have 60.
The sound of it as well. The sound of it emptying. All the evidence is piled against you that you've had a heavy night.
Your fucking dreams are being crushed as the bottles smash. Right, lads, I'm going to go for a quick piss before we get on to points. Here's a second word from our sponsors.
Okay, here we go.
So we've gone through the pros of cans. We've gone through the cons of cans. We've gone through the pros of bottles. We've gone through the cans of bottles. Cons. We've gone through the cans
and
and
that's gonna
bottles.
happen. I could hear that happening like fucking about 5 minutes ago. The middle of the thing was
Schrodinger's
like,
can.
this is Schrodinger's can, yeah.
So pints, lads. Pints. But like straight away, I'm going to come in with a pro that I think just ends the argument. To be quite simple. The environment that you drink pints in trumps the environment that you're drinking cans or bottles in.
Unbeatable.
Yeah, unbeatable, yeah.
Game
Like
over. Podcast over. Good luck. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. Like the barman, everything, like that exchange.
You have to pour your own can, like.
Yeah. And you don't get to ask anybody else's advice, really. You know, when you're like, yes, when you're purchasing a can, but like not when you're drinking a can. Like once you open the can, you have to drink the thing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like even the fact that a lot of tap rooms or bars where they're serving craft beers predominantly, they'll allow you to do a tasting, and like that experience now as well of like, you know, being given the little taster and stuff beforehand, you know, there's that flexibility with the pint.
But even on a far more fundamental level, I was in a pub in Cork 2 days ago, and they had a very limited selection, and the red ale on tap was Murphy's Red, and like I don't think I've ever drank Murphy's Red, and it's not a popular drink. So the group that we were with, there was a couple of tables of us, so, you know, maybe 12, 15 people there, and 3 of the lads at the table ordered before me ordered Murphy's Red. So I ordered a pint. I can't remember what I ordered, pints of. But I thought in my head, I'd been on Smithwick's the night before, and I actually had a fine night drinking Smithwick's. Had a fresh head the next morning. So I said, I might actually get the Murphy's Red, but I'm not going to get it up front. So you have that flexibility, that capacity to see it come down to someone else, see them drink it, gauge off them, bounce it off, not just the barman, but the fellow punter as well. And I was glad I didn't order it because 3 boys switched after 1 pint.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of, but even that, just that fucking capacity to have the crack and have the chat about what you're drinking.
Yeah, I remember actually when the kind of pubs opened there, or when kind of say indoor dining, whatever, opened in September, October last year, and I went to a stag in Waterford, and like, you know, like it was that thing of like we had all been kind of drinking cans for the whole summer, and it was now the time to go back and to go drinking pints. And a few of the lads drank, I think a few of the lads had Smithwick's, two of the lads had Carlsberg, a few had maybe Moretti, I think, and then I had a pint of Guinness. I was like, are you mad? Like, this is the one thing where it's like, you know, as in you could have poured out cans of the other lads for the thing, but like you can't pour out a pint of Guinness. Like, you know, this is an art form, like pouring out a stout, like. And I was the only one who had the Guinness at the time, and it was like, you know, it was, I think, August time or something. So it was, you know, it wasn't kind of stout season at the time. But as soon as all the lads had seen the Guinness being poured in front of me, the next round everybody switched to Guinness, like, because they were just like, what are we doing? Like, we've been missing out on this, and we've just chosen the wrong option for the lack of pinting that we've had over the last while. So I think that experience as well, like, you can't beat that, like.
But that's what I would say is, I think pints are so dependent on the situation. Like if you go into a pub and you're always aware of like what's people drinking, like something like Guinness, is the most inconsistent beer. We can all agree on that,
Yeah.
Everyone's like, this pub does good Guinness, this pub doesn't. You walk in, you do a quick scan, and it's like, what are people drinking? But I think pints they benefit from that as well. It's that environment of going up to the bar, you're getting your pint poured, you're having crack with the barman, you're having crack with the lads that are sitting there, and it's just something else,
That's probably a pro as well against cans in the fact that you have to go to an off license and select your cans, and that's you done and purchased. Whereas you're buying one pint, and if that pint is bad, you can switch straight away. Like, you can go right next pint. So I'll fix this fucking nightmare of a thing I've been drinking. Like, and it does happen. Like, especially what you're saying with like bad taps or whatever. Like, that you can switch on. DJ, what about you?
Oh, I was just going to jump in and say,
yeah,
that's why like each of the different mediums, if we could call it that, have a different collective experience. Bottles you crack open the case of bottles, everyone's pulling out of it. Cans, kind of like everyone's, kind of in the same level. Whereas pints have that beautiful community where you're going up and everyone's at the bar. There's fellas on the high stool and you're ordering, you're having a chat with them while the pint's being poured and everything. And it's just such a different experience.
Yeah.
I have a pro.
Yeah.
The clinking of a pint. The glass
clinking of the glass. Yeah.
Like when you have your can poured, you can clink, but it's not the same. So glass clink. But you know what? Like I'm looking at it and saying, like, you could do out the list of pros and cons of pints all you want, but at the end of the day, it comes back to the same point. The environment you're drinking pints in trumps all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because if you had fucking exercise, we wasted the last 10 minutes going through the pros and cons of cans and bottles. Not what the fuck. Pints are where it's at.
Yeah.
There is a con of pints though, which I think Tomas touched on earlier, about the rounds. About the culture of rounds. I have such a fucking...
But it's that thing where you're in a round with someone, and especially like if you're in like a regular pub and everyone's kind of like they're having Guinness or they're having Heineken and everything, like everyone's having the kind of same round. And it's the problem where if you're into craft beer and you're having a round with people are switching pints and everything, then you have that argument. It's like, oh well, and there's always that fella who will kind of blank out of a round and he's like, I'm not having a pint because this is too expensive, and there's kind of that competitiveness and camaraderie, and it's all kind of melding together. When you have a round of drinks with lads, you're kind of like the army, you're kind of stuck to it to the end.
Yeah. I don't know, there's a bit of a pro behind that as well though, isn't there? Like there's nothing better than that feeling of like tipping out. So say the three of us were in a pub now and I was right, it's my round, and that feeling of coming down with the 3 points in your hand and tipping them down on the table going, Tomas, that's yours, boy. DJ, that's yours. It's fucking, I think that's fucking amazing. Like, that, like that magicalness of that, like, it's just magic, isn't it? Like, just being able to go down. But I get what you're saying though, like that fucking nonsense of
like I will
pulling out of a round, like, you know what I mean?
I will say there, like, you will never get with cans or bottles. You're all sitting there at the table and someone's after going up to the bar and that fella arriving around the corner with a load of pints. You'll never get that feeling with cans or bottles.
Or even the feeling of like when it's not your round and someone gives you a pint and you're like, brilliant. Free pint. Even though it's the same thing, you're after paying for 3 pints the round beforehand. But like you're after getting a pint there and you're like, oh God, look at this. This is great now. I haven't had to do anything and this has been delivered down to me free of charge.
But even as well, if the three of us went for pints, like, you know, then that you can time it out. We're going to be drinking in quantities of 3 pints. So if my wife is saying to me, when will you be home soon? If we're on the 4th pint, the answer is no, because like we have to go through another round.
Yeah.
You know,
you have an excuse built in. Like,
I can't leave because it is not my round for another 2 rounds. So like I can't leave.
but there's also the offside round, you know, the real sly round, you know, the fella whose round it is after going to the bathroom and you go up and, you know, you get the 3 pints and then they comes back and they're sitting there and there's 3 pints sitting in front of you and then it's like, next one's yours, and then it just resets again.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I'll be home tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think it's conclusive. I think pints are just better, and I think like you can talk about your thermodynamics all you want. At the end of the day, nothing beats sitting in the pub drinking a pint.
But that's the thing is, pubs are context dependent. There's shit pubs, there's good pubs, there's average pubs, and cans and bottles will beat out a shit pub. An average pub, if you're with good people, will beat out the rest of them, but you cannot beat pints in a good pub.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good summation of the argument altogether.
That feels like the Snugcast motto.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful note to wrap things up on. If you like the podcast, you can go follow us on social media. Snugcast. We're at Snugcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can see us on there. If you want to send us any emails, we're to snugcast@gmail.com. Please, I think we asked for something on email earlier. I can't remember what it was, but send them on to us anyway. And as well, if you really enjoy the podcast and you want to sign up to our Patreon, we're www.patreon.com/Snugcast. And if you give us money on Patreon, that money will go towards better equipment and enabling us to go and get better guests on. Fantastic guests like Tomas, etc. So if you'd like to support us, please do. I would implore you all to go listen to A New Brew. If you don't, it is a fantastic series. It's a work of art and it's a complete fucking tribute to independent Irish beer. I am a huge fan of it. In fact, the only reason that I haven't listened to all of them is because I saved them for when I need a good escapist podcast. So I don't actually listen to them religiously because I have them queued up for the days that I'm like, fuck this, I need to go to a different world. A New Brew will take you there. It's absolutely fucking brilliant. You'll get lost in the chats. I highly recommend it. So, Owen, parting words for the listeners.
Go follow New Brew and have a few brews for yourself this fucking glorious weekends to come.
Have a new brew this week.
Yeah, have a new brew this week. Yeah, that should be your
Tomas, parting words for our listeners.
Listen to A New Brew. You can find us on all good streaming platforms at A New Brew. You can find me on Instagram at A New Brew Podcast, and if you want me saying like kind of mad shit on Twitter, got it at Guineas. But
great handle.
Support your local brewery. Find out who's making what in your local area. Support it. Pay your money and get involved, because that's what everyone survives on.
Brilliant. My parting words for you all are: go fuck yourselves. We love you. Good luck. Good night. God bless.